Hi, my name is Jordan Bowling. I am working on becoming a kindergarten teacher. In the following presentation, I describe my vision statement and how it can help me in becoming or being culturally aware in my future classroom. Types of learners and hidden curriculum. I feel that in order to truly understand the types of learners you may have within your classroom, you must get to know the students and their families. This means learning about different cultures, traditions, and beliefs within these cultures. Culture is more than just a person's ethnic or racial background. Culture is socially transmitted ways of thinking, behaving, feeling, and acting within a group. Culture occurs between people acting and residing in a group. Cultural ideas are passed on from generation to generation. Lesson 1. Lecture Notes Definition of Culture, as cited from Glocken and Chin, 2003. I am lucky to have a lead teacher to look up to for help when it comes to teaching different types of learners and how to connect with students of different cultural backgrounds. Currently, I am an EA, and that's why I say a teacher that I look up to, or a lead teacher I look up to. Another tool I found helpful in working with different types of learners was in reading Black Ants and Buddhist by Conway. Conway's style of teaching brings to light different concepts of incorporating different types of learners into your curriculum. One way that stood out to me was, a good way I can reach all types of learners in my classroom is through books that help bring out text-to-self and text-to-world connections in the students. Conway, 2006, page 65. In this slide, I also include the use of a hidden curriculum within the classroom. The Glossary of Education Reform defines hidden curriculum as the unwritten, unofficial, and often unintended lessons, values, and perspectives that students learn in school. Hidden Curriculum, 2015. Hidden curriculums are all around us, and it is up to us to use them either to our advantage and teach our students something positive or not at all. I want to create a classroom full of different types of learning opportunities, part of their curriculum and outside its boundaries. Our kids learn within a system of education devised for a world that increasingly does not exist. Edwards, 2014. The standard curriculums we base our classrooms off are not doing any good when it comes to teaching our students. We need to step outside those lines and create learning environments that push our students to new levels. I want to create a classroom environment that gets students up and out of their seats to learn new concepts. In doing this, I must create lesson plans that are out of the box and get students more involved in the world around them, kind of the way Conway does with her students in getting them to get out there in their communities and help others. Slide 3. Places and space in school. The next slide is about the environment you want to create within your classroom. The article, Lessons in School Design from Crow Island Elementary, opens up by making you really think about what it is you want your classroom to feel like and teach students. Almost half of today's public schools were built for baby boomers at a time when the prevailing design was desk and neat rows, teacher at the front of the classroom. Boss, 2015. Do we really want to teach our students in the same neat rows with the teacher up front lecturing in the way their parents or grandparents learned? I know personally I did not like being taught in this way growing up, especially at a young age of 5 to 6 years old. So I know that my students would not want to be taught in this way, and I do not want to teach them in this way. I feel that students of all ages need a learning environment that is hands-on and gets them to think outside the box. They also need a classroom that they feel safe to be themselves in. I want to create a classroom environment that is a safe place for all students to be themselves in and embrace their differences. A classroom is a second home to students, and as so, they should feel comfortable and safe. There are many times that the classroom is the only safe place for a student. So as a teacher, it will be one of my main goals to create that safe, welcoming, warm, and loving environment for my students. Slide 4. The achievement gap. The achievement gap is something that affects the student based on their socioeconomic status, race, color, or even gender. This is something we see no matter where we live. The Department of Education now makes clear that state school districts and schools must make education resources equally available to all students without regard to race, color, or national origin. Edelman, 2014. The U.S. Department of Education also prohibits schools and school districts from discriminating in their allocation of courses, academic programs, and extracurricular activities, teachers and leaders, school facilities, and technology and instructional materials. Edelman, 2014. By doing this, the Department of Education is helping those students that are less fortunate, often children of color, receive the same quality of teaching and learning as their wealthier peers. In order to help this gap, I feel that we need to teach our students with the mindset of equity and not equality. By teaching using the mindset of equity, we are making sure that each student has the tools and resources they need to succeed as an individual. Versus when we teach with the mindset of equality, we are saying that each student is the same and needs the same tools and resources to succeed. We cannot teach this way because just like in slide 1, types of learners, each learner has a different style of learning that best suits them. In order to teach a student's style of learning, we must teach using equity over equality. Slide 5. Culture as a disability. Common sense allows that persons unable to handle a difficult problem can be labeled disabled. Social analysis shows that being labeled often invites a public response that multiplies the difficulties facing the seemingly unable. Cultural analysis shows that disability refers most precisely to inadequate performances only on tasks that are abruptly circumscribed from daily life. Disabilities are less the property of persons than they are moments in a cultural focus. Everyone in any culture is subject to being labeled and disabled. McDormand and Varon, 1995. We often do not think of culture as a disability, but it can be at times. Children are raised certain ways and expected to act the ways they are taught. Then when a child is introduced to a culture different from theirs, they may act rudely without knowing it is rude. An example of this from my personal childhood or cultural beliefs is that I was taught never to leave chopsticks or silverware sticking straight up in my food. This was only done at funerals so that the deceased could eat with you. Now I find myself correcting my fiancé when he leaves his silverware sticking straight up. At first he laughed at me for doing this, but once I told him the meaning behind it, he came to understand a different culture. By understanding a different culture, you help yourself to not be looked at as culture as a disability. Slide 6. Pop culture and rituals. In creating my classroom culture, I want to share with my students different forms of media and learning materials in order to teach different concepts. Just like the way Conway talks about her main teaching style. If you teach critically and if teaching critically is different from the dominant culture in your school, you may feel like you're going against the grain. 2006. And I feel that it is better for a school to have many different types of teaching styles versus just one cut and paste type. It gives students the chance to learn through different styles and find the way that truly helps them learn. Through pop culture, you can help bring out different styles of teaching and different styles of learning in your students as well as in yourself. Slide 7. Culturally responsive teaching. Culture encompasses many things, some of which are more important for teachers to know than others because they have direct implications for teaching and learning. Among these are ethnic groups, cultural values, traditions, communication, learning styles, contributions, and rational patterns. For example, teachers need to know which ethnic groups give priority to communal living and cooperative problem solving, and how these preferences affect educational motivation, aspiration, and task performance. B. How different ethnic groups' protocols of appropriate ways for children to interact with adults are exhibited in instructional settings. And C. The implications of gender role socialization in different ethnic groups for implementing equity initiatives in classroom instructions. A. 2002. In becoming a culturally responsive teacher, I feel that I must be open to learning and understanding my students, families, and their traditions. This last slide brings the whole vision statement full circle, because we first started learning how to become culturally aware, and now at the end we are learning how to bring this into our own teaching style.